10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us? All right, here we go. Welcome back to 10 Steps Further. We have no guest. It's just
who needs
Jack
a guest?
and Jonathan.
In fact, after what I got yesterday from you, we may never have another guest.
Well, two things, right? Leslie is currently flying to Florida.
Do you want to tell them what Leslie's doing, or you want me to?
Secretly taking her kids.
Yeah, she sent us a video today. They haven't seen the grandparents in 18 months.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So they woke their kids up today and said, "You want to go to Florida?"
I saw that video.
Yeah, showed us a video. They go, "Yeah, we're leaving right now on a plane." Well, we could say this because the kids won't listen to this ever.
Right.
But even if they did, it wouldn't come out till after this has happened. But I believe tomorrow they're going to wake up and say, "Who wants to go to Disney World?"
Right? Oh, man. So good.
It's so great.
My parents, never. Not a chance. Any of that stuff. A plane, that's too expensive.
Well, how many times have you been to Disneyland?
Ever?
Yes.
Oh, probably, I don't know, 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
Yeah. Ever. Like, first time was like 14 years old. But yeah, like when I was a kid, we lived in the mountains outside of Spokane, like 45 minutes outside of Spokane, Washington. And we didn't have a phone for the first couple years. Then we got a phone, and we hadn't seen our grandparents. We'd see them once a year.
Right.
And we could never call them because there was a thing called long distance. We couldn't afford to call them. So I think my parents called them every few months, and we get to talk to them maybe. But I don't remember ever phone calls.
I feel like as Jonathan speaking, banjo music should be playing.
Yeah. So hey, you want to go to Disney World was just out of the question.
Yeah, not really a thing. I don't know if the people listening know or care, but my son's new wife flew him to Disney World for his birthday this year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
They went to 2 different parks. They went on the Star Wars ride. It was awesome.
Young, married, no kids.
Oh, so great.
Working remotely. They basically can do whatever they want.
They can totally do whatever they want. I miss it, man. I miss it. Okay, here's why we're never having any other guests on.
Okay.
Jonathan sends me this encouraging text.
Luke Mischke. Shout out to my man, Luke Mischke.
Okay. I got a bone to pick with you, Luke. Just got a call from a friend in Spokane. He's been listening to 10 Steps for a while and was just calling to tell me how much he likes it. Okay, so far so good. He says it doesn't make him tired like some other Christian podcasts do. Not sure exactly what that means, but it's good.
Yeah.
And then his last line, he also said he thinks he'd really like Chad.
Yeah, so Chad was excited. Jack, not so much.
Well, it appears as though Chad has been chosen. How's that for a segue?
Oh, there we go. That's what we're talking about today. What's this one called? Do we actually have a title for it?
Yeah, we do. Let me look it up.
Are you chosen? Are you not chosen?
Our title's much nicer.
Okay,
God chose you as His own.
Okay.
But that's not really the topic. I mean, it is the topic.
Right.
Because most of the time, almost all the time, when it's mentioned in the Bible, it's meant to encourage you. Hey, you're chosen.
Yeah, you're a chosen people.
That's right.
A chosen generation.
That's right.
A chosen priesthood.
But of course, Jonathan takes it to the place of, okay, to be chosen means that there's also unchosen.
Right.
So, do you remember any like elementary school?
I didn't go to elementary school.
You didn't? You were homeschooled, yeah. So you didn't ever experience this. The line everybody up, and somebody you choose 2 captains.
I don't think so. Maybe
they choose.
I know the scenario from movies.
Yeah, right. Maybe it happens more in movies, and we live in California. In California, everyone's a winner. Everyone is chosen first.
A quick story on that. I knew a guy back in the day, and he was a black guy raised in a white community.
Right.
And he hated that choosing, of teams for a different reason than anybody else hates that.
Okay.
He said, as a black guy for sports in a white community, you're always picked first. And I wasn't good at sports.
So many disappointed white dudes.
Yeah, he's like, they always pick me first. And we never won because of me. Like,
Oh, that's funny.
yeah.
Yeah, so choosing is one thing, non-choosing is the other. Mm-hmm. And I have some verses here, and I have some research and what have you. It kind of starts here. Let me maybe just read some verses, all right?
All right.
Ephesians 1, God chose us in him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in his sight. In love, he predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ in accordance with his pleasure and will, to the praise of his glorious grace, which he has freely given to us in the one he loves. In him, we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. Mm-hmm. So he's writing it to a bunch of followers,
Right.
Right? They're handing these letters from town to town to town, and
Right.
his goal is to encourage them.
Yeah.
But if you're sitting on the outside, you know, you're just a tax collector who just wants to see what's going on, right?
Right.
You've got to feel that. I had a friend once tell me he hates the "not of this world" bumper stickers
Okay.
because he feels like they're all cocky, like Christians are going, "Hey, man, I'm not of this world.
Yeah.
Sorry, suckers."
Well, I could see that because of the way Christianity is currently portrayed in our culture. But if you look at it like globally, or not globally, but throughout history, this idea of not of this world, that mindset would get you through a time where all your friends are getting killed.
Right.
Like that.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
Yeah.
we look at it now as like, oh, you think you're better than me because your slogan's kind of cool. But back in, you know, in other times, it's just like, we just got to remember we're not of this world. We're not of this world.
Yeah.
Like that. I love that concept.
This world is not my home.
Right.
I'm just passing through. I don't
Right.
know who sang it. I don't know.
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
I could sing it, but I don't want it. If Chad was here, he would definitely sing it.
Oh.
And your buddy would love it. He would think, Chad can sing.
That's why he likes Chad so much. Is
'Cause
his
he can
singing
sing.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's look at the positive side.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
Because there is a positive side to that, right? To being chosen, to,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in other verses, I'm trying to find them. I have them written here someplace. He talks about being, you know, those who are adopted, right?
Right.
You know, and adoption is choosing. So we've had interesting conversations with our daughter about this
Uh-huh.
because we went down to Haiti over and over and over again, and we just thought of anybody who could succeed in America, it's her, because she's always super helpful and she had a really fun personality. You know,
Right.
She seemed to fit our vibe.
Right.
Well, we met a lot of kids. We liked a lot of kids,
Right.
but we specifically chose her. But in her mind, when she came over, she had in her mind that we wanted her sister instead,
Wow. Okay.
or that there are other options. And
Right.
I had to have that conversation over and over and
Yeah.
over. There wasn't a second. There wasn't a, hey, if you know, because her mom is alive in Haiti, so we talked to her mom, because her mom
Right.
would always say when we left, hey, take my daughters.
Hmm.
And so we talked to her first. She says, yes, I would love it if you adopted my daughter and took her to Haiti or to America. And so, but if that doesn't happen, there's probably not a child
Right.
in our home.
Right. Right.
It's either her or nothing.
Yeah.
So there's that sense
Mm-hmm.
to this.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's an exclusivity to it that, in one way, people don't like it. You know, well, why
Sure,
were they
right.
chosen and I wasn't? But then if you're the one chosen, it should be the most encouraging thing ever.
Right.
You know, shouldn't it? I mean, it should be just like,
Right.
wow, I was chosen. Like,
Yeah, because he doesn't just say we're his children.
Mm-hmm.
He says we're his adopted.
Mm-hmm.
So the adopted implies choosing,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you get what you get with your bios.
Yeah. Well, and there is some discussion there of the adopted, specifically speaking of Gentile believers, that I pulled you out of a people that wasn't my people. Like
Okay,
the Jews grew up knowing me, but the Gentiles, like, you grew up following all kinds of weird stuff. And I chose out of all the peoples of the world, I chose some to follow me.
Right.
I've even heard. I don't really buy into it, but I've even heard when it like the conversations of predestination and God choosing and those kind of discussions are only being applied to Gentiles. And that the Jews were already his, like they're the chosen people, they're his
Right,
people.
yeah.
But then this idea of like taking others and adopting others is speaking of those that were not his. They were not part of the family of God, and they were brought in.
Yeah.
So
And from my understanding, the Gentile adoption model,
Mm-hmm.
you could be adopted as an adult. And the intention was, I'm going to adopt you. I don't have any sons to give my inheritance to.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
you're a faithful servant of mine.
Yeah.
I'm going to adopt you as my own so that you can inherit.
Right.
Which, when you read it like that,
Yeah.
it becomes even more rich.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's what God is offering each of us.
Right.
Is amazing inheritance.
right.
A life that's so much better and richer and fuller here, and
Right.
of course in eternity.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And is it Galatians? He talks about that. He's like, you were I'm inviting you in not as slaves, but as children,
Right.
as adopted children.
Yeah.
So we need to wrap our heads around that because there is, Paul will also speak of like, hey, I'm a bondservant to Christ. Like he introduces himself of that. I'm a slave of Christ over
Right.
and over.
Yeah, right.
But at the same time, understanding, yeah, but I'm a son. I'm family. I've been adopted in.
So bond servant.
Mm-hmm.
What is the difference between somebody who is a servant and somebody who's a bond servant?
My understanding would be that it's a slave by choice.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like you've because oftentimes there would be like you're a slave, especially within Judaism. Like you could become a slave of another person because you couldn't pay your debt,
right.
and then
You're in trouble.
yeah, and you'd serve your sentence,
Right. Right.
And if your master was awesome, like, do you really want to just start from scratch, or do you want to just be with your master? And so many would just choose to stay with their master.
What the American church never understands, ever, is the power of hunger. And so in that land, you're starving. I mean, you're
Right.
with your children. You're watching them starve to death.
Right.
They have witnessed people starve to death.
Right.
And so they allow themselves to work somebody else's field or work as what would be called a servant. In many ways, if done properly, it's like a hired hand.
Right.
It's
Right.
not a servant. It's just the word.
You
that
got a
was
place
used.
to live, you got food on the table, and you're
Right.
doing work.
That's right.
You got responsibility.
And then the mark of somebody who's become a bond servant is it's a nail through the ear.
Right.
It's an earring, but it's a nail. It's hammered through. It's bent over so that they know that you're choosing to live in
Right.
this property.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of course, the problem is just as throughout history, obviously, you use the word servant or slave. Jeez.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I guess the difference is always who is your ruler.
Right.
Is your ruler is your ruler evil and
Yeah.
or benevolent?
Right. There's a psalm that says that I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than I don't know what his comparison is. I don't know the rest of it, but it's
than
like
a Walmart greeter.
Yeah,
I think
like
that's
I'd rather
what-
I'd rather be the greeter. For
Right.
that, like I'd rather be God's greeter than
Yep.
than like anything else.
Yeah.
And I think that was said by David, who was a king.
Yeah,
And
right,
I'd rather
right.
be that than this. And so
Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere.
right.
Can you sing that?
I can. Not as good as Chad.
He chooses not to. Let me take it up a notch.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
So clearly, God, He wants you to feel chosen. He wants you to
Yeah.
feel honored like you're His child. I don't know. Maybe we need to talk about this. He wants you to know that you have access to all the riches that He has.
Right.
What's on that list?
Yeah.
Certainly forgiveness. We go there first off. Forgiveness.
Yeah. Clean slate.
Clean slate. Right.
Every
And
day,
most-
every day clean slate. Like
That's
not
right.
not the day you got saved, but every day is like, all right, starting fresh.
Yep.
Which I think is massive. Like forgiveness. I had a friend who used to say we need to learn to preach the gospel to ourselves every day.
Yeah. That's it. So that's what I was just going to say is our ability to forgive ourselves is so weak.
Yeah.
And God calls the way He says it, as far as the east is from the west, which is a Hebrew way of saying eternal. Like,
Right.
like you just can't; those places never meet. So,
Yep.
so that's how I forgive you.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people just can't live
Right.
with themselves or forgive their regrets, or
Right.
I should have raised my kid differently, or whatever.
Right. Well, and it's funny because some of it is connected to the inability to forgive yesterday's sins. Like, I mean, there are people who maybe came out of radical addiction and crime and all this, got saved, and they don't wrestle so much with the stuff before they got saved. They wrestle with the stuff before they went to church. Like,
Yeah, right, right. Just that day.
Yeah, that day. It's just like,
got in an
man,
argument
I
with
blew
their
up
kid.
at my kids again. It's like, dude,
Yep.
you used to be a Coke dealer.
Yeah, right,
Like,
right. Yep, yep.
And so it's
I lazily threw my aluminum can in the regular trash instead of the recycle.
yeah. I mean, so I just feel like we need, like, when we begin to walk in that we are a forgiven people. I think that's part of the riches that He offers us.
Yeah, yeah. And we've in this podcast we've tried to explore that. You're not reaching as much joy as you can. There's no way you're touching the amount of peace that God wants to give you.
Right.
We're always missing out on something. But what God says about us is what He would like to do is lavish
Right.
upon us.
Right.
And the mind shift that has to be done is in our own heads, not in His head.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like he just desires to give us more and more and better, and we just don't even realize that that's the kind of guy He is.
And I don't think we realize how much He has to offer. Like, I just think about, my son has been kind of dabbling in some music, software creation, that kind of stuff, right? And so because I'm his dad and I've got that stuff,
Right.
he borrows microphones, he borrows guitar cables, he borrows
Yeah.
he borrows stuff to kind of play with some ideas. And it's because because I'm his dad. And yet at the same time, just thinking about this concept, there is a lot that he has access to that he will never use. He just won't care to use. Not just in the music software world. Like, he's using that because that's our thing. But like, I know some stuff that could probably benefit him that he may never know because we haven't had that conversation. There might be food in the cupboard that he will never eat. And I feel like as Christians, there is that, like, as we walk with God, we benefit from the things that He's offered to us, but I'm just convinced there's a whole cupboard full of stuff.
Right.
That is just like, when you go to the cupboard, you start realizing, like, oh, there's more.
Yeah, I don't know if you know this, but that thought that you have thrown out so many times has changed the way I pray in the morning. Go, God, God, help me to see that more. Or some ways it's helped me to be eligible for that more.
Right.
And maybe that's even broken thinking right there. Because, like, what do I have?
Yeah.
What do I have to earn to be eligible? I just think of gratitude.
Right.
Like, I want to make sure I'm grateful enough because the people of
Right.
Israel were ungrateful, and that did disqualify them from some of the more
Oh, for
promised
sure.
land or what have you.
Yeah, it'll hinder. But yeah, I mean, and that might be. I think that that's not necessarily as broken as, because I think if you look at it, you're just like, there's this this openness to receiving is how we receive. Like, when we, like, God, I recognize that if I don't have it, it's because I got in the way.
Right.
And if we constantly come with that, I mean, if my kids were like, Dad, I realize, like, I'm not getting a fatty allowance every month because I'm in the way.
Right.
Like, that I'm encouraged by that. If they're like, Dad, you're stingy and holding back. Like, yeah, I'm going to keep being stingy and holding back.
What I'm noticing about myself is I have to kind of shift how I ask, because what I generally go to is, okay, God, I know there's more. So, like, money, right?
Yeah.
Like, can I be driving a better car?
Right.
Right? Can everybody's house is going up in value right now.
Right.
And so I'm getting realtors telling me, sell your house.
Right.
It's worth so much.
You're like, where am I going to live?
Right. So the more that I need to ask for is maybe not in the ways that I would generally ask.
Right.
Maybe it's in, God, open up my eyes to what it is that you,
Yeah.
to that more purpose or that more peace, or, to be
Right.
able to settle in the security that you've got me,
Right.
rather than the hustle of I've got to get more to be secure.
Right. Well, this is a sidetrack.
Really?
Just down that line.
Jonathan's got sidetrack.
But just that concept of money, like money is not an end result in itself. Money is provision, and God is provision. And oftentimes those are competing provisions. And like money is there's one thing to say, God, I want enough money, and then I'll drive a nicer car. There's another thing to say, God, do you have a nicer car? You know, those are different things, because one is like, well, God, if you gave me the money, I wouldn't need you. I could go buy a nicer car.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the car is metaphorical, but just in the sense of thinking about like that desire that's on your heart. And here's the reality is a lot of people aren't pursuing the desire that's on our hearts because we think, well, if I had enough money, I would pursue it.
Okay, let me tell you a story. Somebody told me this. You're in a parking lot. It's really packed.
Okay.
Let's say it's Black Friday,
Okay.
and you got to get a couple things.
Right.
God,
You picked the wrong day to get a couple things, but
God, God, open up a parking space for me, and there, right at the front, a parking space opens up. Until the guy says, "Never mind, I found one." But in some ways, that's kind of us, right?
Right.
Like when the provision comes, and I got, I'm good.
okay. Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so the
that's
lack of
funny.
provision sometimes is what actually keeps us close.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or the in our minds we think we need more. I don't
Right.
I don't know if that added, but you were moving us off.
I know. I was like,
Center.
we've gone away
We'll get
from
there.
being
I want to
chosen.
read you this. I read this morning. It's from a book called Gentle and Lowly.
Okay.
The Heart of Christ for Sinners. Sounds exciting, right?
Sounds old.
It's not. It's new, but it does actually talk about people that wrote like 500-600 years ago. He
Okay.
takes all those old writers and he kind of revisits some of them. So I don't know if you'd be into it. Tell me what you think of this. Men are wont to judge and measure God from themselves.
Yep.
For their hearts are moved by angry passions and are very difficult to be appeased, and therefore they think that they cannot be reconciled to God when they've offended him.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord shows that he is far from resembling men.
Yeah. Yeah. I was having a similar thought this morning that wasn't as eloquent. We believe, all of us, we believe a lot of things, not because they're true, but because they're what we've always been around.
Right.
And that's why I think there's benefit in traveling to other parts of the world where people, they believe stuff that we don't believe. And,
Right.
and some of that stuff we can look at and we can be like, you're crazy that you believe that. But then there are other things that they believe that could actually be right and us being wrong. I think the same is true of every people, it could be people groups, it could be social classes, it could be demographic, it could be ages. We believe different things. Like I was in a conversation about a week and a half ago of this idea of men going to work at a job they don't like to put food on the table for kids that they do like and the wife that they love, you know, like, so, and I was like, and they're like, well, how do you fix that? The previous generation never tried to fix that. Like that was right.
Yeah. Yeah.
This generation is like, that's terribly wrong.
Right.
And those things are like, well, which is true? And I'm thinking, well, they're both true. Like they're, you know, like one is this guy's sacrificing for his family. I'm not going to call that wrong.
Well, what my wife always goes to is if you can take that idea and put it in Haiti, does it make sense then?
Okay.
Because there is the idea that everybody should have a job that they love and are passionate about.
Right.
In all respects.
Yeah.
The guy that, retires from coaching, I haven't worked a day in my life.
Right.
We should all be that.
Right.
I golf with my buddy Ken Blanchard.
Yeah.
And he always talks about, I'm not retiring, I'm refiring. It's just his personality. Like, I don't think he's putting it on. And I love his attitude.
Right.
And I love that he's found something that he's passionate about. He says,
Right.
when you find something you're passionate about, you don't work a day in your life because you love it.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing.
Right.
But is that the way the guy in Haiti is going to feel?
Right.
Because he's on the corner
Right.
And he's just trying to sell enough gum to get enough money for, rice and beans.
One meal today.
For one
Yeah.
meal today.
Yeah.
Does that work there?
Right.
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now we're getting way off.
Yeah.
All right.
Chosen. Are you chosen?
Let me take the chosen conversation up a notch.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
We
let's do
like
it.
being chosen.
Yeah.
We like having access.
Yeah.
We don't like the idea that somebody else is not chosen.
Right.
And you didn't experience this in elementary school because your elementary school was your mom and your brothers. But we all had to line up for
my mom-
dodgeball.
And my mom liked me better than she liked my brother. So there
So
was
she
that.
chose you
Yeah.
first. Yeah, you like that. So being chosen last is no fun, but not being
Right.
chosen at all.
Yeah.
So Romans 9, Paul writes, "But who are you, a human being, to talk back to God?" Okay, that's a good place to start.
Right.
Shall what is formed, so the one who formed it? Why did you make me like this?
Right.
Does not the potter have the right to make out of the same lump of clay some pottery for special purposes and some for common use? What if God, although choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the objects of his wrath, prepared for destruction? What if he did this to make the riches of his glory known to the objects of his mercy, whom he prepared in advance for glory? Even us, whom he called, and not only for the Jews, but for the Gentiles. Okay, so here are the two places that we have to wrestle with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible that he has made some that are objects of wrath, so that those who are objects for glory would be prepared for that glory?
Mm-hmm.
So that there's contrast there.
Mm-hmm.
To actually be chosen means others are unchosen.
Right.
So what do you
Right.
do with that?
I think it all, like the foundation that we stand on that troubles us is we stand on a foundation like of we are good, people are good. And when you stand on a foundation of people good, now any talk of judgment, and especially talk of not chosen or objects of wrath, becomes, well, if a good is an object of wrath, then the one giving the wrath is evil.
Right.
But if our foundation is we are broken, we are evil, then an object of mercy says he is good. And that, like, our cultural foundation is we're all good except for there's a few bad apples out there like Hitler and, Saddam Hussein.
No, I promise you 100% that there are people that will look at Hitler and go, you know what, if you knew how he grew up and what his parents were like, he probably wasn't that bad a guy, right?
Yeah.
It's generally where we want to run to. But is it possible that there are actually evil people, that there are people who are selling other people, there are people who are pimping out other people? Is it possible there are people who have gone so far that direction? And I don't think we like to even think like that. Right. But it appears that some of this is what's happening.
But I think, too, I think one of the things when you follow Jesus' stories and you look at his preaching, his goal was to communicate to the people that they were Hitler. The Sermon on the Mount was like, hey, these people over here think that they're hitting it because they're checking more boxes than you. But they're not checking enough boxes. Like it was, they are a broken people. They are not perfect. They are not. And I think about,
you know how when you finish a message, you like to have an action step.
Okay. Yeah.
Sermon on the Mount has an action step.
Yeah.
And he gives
go
all
be
these.
Perfect.
Go be perfect. You go, wait, what?
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts with, you need to be more righteous than the Pharisees, who appeared to be the most righteous people anybody knew. So it's sandwiched between those two statements, and he just goes down and he says, you think you're not supposed to kill people. I'm saying you're not supposed to think in your heart, man, life would be better if that person wasn't here.
Yeah, or even call him a bad name on the freeway.
Yeah,
right.
And I think of it this way to kind of bring it into our context, right? We want to speak out against the inhumane treatment of chickens that the farmers got but we're gonna eat the chicken nuggets.
That's
You
right.
know, we're
Yes.
gonna speak out against pornography, and we're gonna speak out against the sex trade. But we're gonna watch the PG-13 movie with the 19-year-old girl with no clothes on, with her back to the camera.
Right.
Like, we are part of the problem. We are, and I think that the discussion is, when it comes to Chosen, is, are we looking at the world as a world of kindergartners, and God is sending some of them to wrath, or are we seeing the world as we are death row inmates and some are being set free?
Yeah, I think that's healthy. I think there'll still be some people that have a problem with that. There's all kinds of Bible that talks about the ability to choose, right? But then here it feels like you're chosen. So how can it be both?
Yeah.
And the only way I would describe that is God is not so small that you can understand him.
Right.
If he is eternal and he knows how the story is being written,
Right.
that can't change.
Right.
But the way he is written, he still allows us opportunity to choose.
Right.
So I read John MacArthur on what he thinks about Romans 9.
Okay.
Okay? And I'll just read it. He says, listen, God says I prepare vessels for glory, but vessels are prepared for destruction. And what's happening there in the Greek tense is God is taking one step away from the responsibility of preparing a person for his creative act for hell. So what he's basically saying is, there's an active tense where God is actively working,
Okay.
and there's a passive tense where the person is working it for themselves.
Okay.
And so when you read this, what if God, choosing to show his wrath and make his power known, bore with great patience the objects of wrath? That's the passive. These people are objects that are being prepared for wrath. How
Okay.
are they being prepared for wrath? Is it because God set them up to fail?
Right.
No, it's because in their own actions and in their own deeds, they're choosing distance from God.
Right.
And the active is God choosing, God wanting those people for himself. All right? So that's how he makes that distinction. So I don't know. Sometimes I read some of that kind of stuff and I think, feels like we're playing with words a little bit.
Right, because Paul goes on in that same chapter to say, well, then is God unjust if he's appointing some to wrath and some to mercy? And his only answer is, who are you to argue against
That's
God?
true. Right. Right.
Like, he's like, who are you? Is God unjust? I don't know. You deal with it. Like, just because it's the way it happened. Like,
Okay, let me read you from the other side. Okay.
all right.
2 Peter 3:9. I want you to recall the words spoken in the past of the holy prophets and the command given by our Lord and Savior through your apostles. The Lord is not slow in keeping his promise, as some understand slowness. He's patient with you, not wanting anyone to perish,
Right.
but everyone to come to repentance.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that is his heart.
Right.
But there are some, I don't know if we're ever going to really be able to wrap a bow on this and totally
Right.
understand it.
I don't think we are. I mean, I think, like, there's a lot of things.
Before you go, can I read you one more?
Yeah, yeah.
So what do you do with this?
Okay.
Proverbs 16:4. The Lord works out everything to its proper end, even the wicked for a day of destruction.
No, I'm okay with it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, that's the thing is like, I don't have that sense of fair that everybody has to have an equal shot. I don't have to have that. Like, and here's why, because I'm worse than most people that are saved. I feel that way. I feel like I feel like I'm an object of mercy. Not I deserved it, not I earned it, not I did it. I'm an object of mercy. And I know that, I think with those passages, there is nobody who comes to God asking for mercy who doesn't get mercy. There's nobody.
Right.
And so it's like, do you want to be chosen? Like, and so, like, we look at Star Wars and we're like, well, you know, it's so sad that the poor emperor had to get destroyed in the end of Star Wars. But we're like, no, the author wrote a great story, and the great story ends with the emperor getting thrown into the pit, you know? And so, what, like, that's okay. That's a great story. And as we look at God as he is outside of the story, and we are playing our part, and we are making our choices, and our choices are proving what he wrote.
Right.
So it's not like our choices are not, this is how I would see it, is our choices are not determining what he's writing. Our choices are proving what he wrote. So if you want to be the hero of the story, follow him.
Right.
If you harden your heart like Pharaoh did, okay, then you're the villain.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So let me quote another John MacArthur.
okay.
If you study the Bible very carefully, you see that everywhere in Scripture, the responsibility for such preparation lies right in the very heart of the man who goes to hell. Is this right? Jesus said, "You will not come to me that you might You will not come to me that you might have life." At the end of the book of Revelation, he says, "Come and let him that is athirst come." And so God says, "I fit for glory, but vessels are fitted for destruction."
Mm-hmm.
Then he says this: Judas was not created by God to occupy hell. Interesting. So we're putting together a message series, and Chad comes to me, the beloved Chad.
Yeah.
Remember the chosen Chad?
He's the best of us.
The chosen Chad. Chad says, "Hey, I've planned this. You're speaking on Judas on Easter."
On Easter. And you went with it. I'd have been like, no.
I went with it. I like it. I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, it will be. I just wouldn't
But
have
that
done
is
it.
the question, right? Like Judas was the betrayer.
Right.
When Jesus chose him as one of the 12, did he not know?
Oh, he knew.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew. So does that mean Judas didn't have a chance?
It depends, I think, on the layer that we're looking at. If we're looking at the layer within the story, as we read the story from a human standpoint, yeah, he had a chance. He had as much a chance as anybody else.
Right.
When we look at the eternal thing, it's like, I don't think he had a shot. I think he was written for destruction
Right.
before he did the things that caused him to go there.
Right.
So all it did was prove God to be right, and he didn't really have a chance. But, and I mean, you could play with this in a weird movie idea of if he had remained faithful, somebody else had to be Judas.
Yeah, right.
Because there were prophecies somebody
Who's
had to
next?
betray him. So I guess he had a 1 in 12 shot that he wasn't going to be the one.
Right.
In an alternate dimension, it was probably Peter.
Yeah.
So which is way too heady.
Yeah.
In sci-fi.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't know. Do we even talk about this? Is this even worthy? Like, why would even God allow us to choose?
To choose him?
Yeah. I mean, why is there even a choice? Why is there even a tree in the middle of the garden?
Right.
Why is there even evil out there?
Yeah.
People ask that question. Why is that even a thing?
I think we land where Paul lands, and we say that we live in the world that God created. Why am I attracted to a woman who has 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth, and no fur? Like what?
Right.
Why? I don't know. This is the world we live in. Like, why do I like the taste of ice cream and less the taste of broccoli? Like, why? I don't know. It's God created a certain world that we live in, and I think that when it comes to that, it's like, yeah, we can say, God, why is the tree in the garden? But
Okay.
I feel like Paul's right.
Let me take you back to a moment in your life.
Okay.
Somebody asks you, okay, like who could you see yourself with getting married? And you
Okay.
answered,
Yeah, Sandy Powell.
and that was how many years before you started dating?
I was a couple, maybe 2.
2 years before you even started. I could see myself.
Yeah.
And then you guys get on a bus
Yeah,
to go to work at a camp in Maine.
right.
And you really hadn't spent much time together.
No, I mean, we were friends. We had been friends, but yeah, we rode a bus across the country.
And from getting on the bus in Spokane
Uh-huh.
to getting off the bus in Maine,
Right.
somehow
Yeah.
date number 1 took place.
Yeah.
And by the time you
Somehow,
got there,
yeah.
it was over.
Right.
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 How long after that were you married?
So that happened in June, and we were married in February.
Okay.
So
Right. It didn't take much.
Yeah.
It didn't take much.
Right.
I would say that's probably the best thing. I'm going to just go on a limb. Best thing that ever happened on public transportation on a city bus. Man,
probably, right?
Right.
Greyhound bus.
Right.
It's like Carnival Cruise.
There was a day when you didn't have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
When what happened was your parents and somebody else's parents
Right.
got together and said, this is the person that you're going to be with.
Right.
Now, I believe that in that circumstance, people could learn to love each other.
Right.
Or they could learn to not love each other, whatever.
Right.
Choice makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm.
Your ability to choose makes all the difference. The reason why there is that tree in that garden is because God wanted us to choose him or not choose him. And
Right.
you don't have true love until there is choice,
Right.
till I get to pick.
Right.
And 34 years ago, it was Jelaine.
Mm-hmm.
We were at a camp, and we met when I was bouncing a guitar on my nose in a counselor meeting.
That's impressive.
And gosh, she's not made of stone, right?
Right.
She had to have me.
Yeah.
And we weren't quite as quick as you, but we met in August. We were married the next August.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that has become the great love story of my life
Right.
because of choice.
Right.
And I do believe everybody gets to choose.
Right.
And in the choosing, you're also chosen, and you become God's adopted. You become his kid. And
Right.
you get access to all of this peace and purpose that you never would have had before.
Right. Well, let me add to that story real
Yeah.
quick. So before I got on the bus,
Okay, yeah.
I came back to Spokane. I was in Maine for the winter. I came back to Spokane. Then we were going to go back to Maine, and Sandy was going to come in with me. She hadn't been there yet. And I had a conversation with my mom really about marriage and about the future and about whatever. And I had this in my head. This was my thought. This was the thing I was going to try to commit to from that conversation before I got on the bus. The next girl I date, I will not break up with.
Wow.
Like, and that was because I was, it's like, I'm into this girl for a little bit, that girl for a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And now, if it wasn't Sandy, I don't know how that would have worked out. It would have been a lot harder. But
Yeah.
but I just think about, like, it was like the commitment was made before I knew who it was. Like, that's what's crazy to me to think about it. Just like I made that decision before we ever got on the bus. And then and that even on the bus, I'm like, really? Like this quick?
That's so great. So this isn't the same thing, but I basically made up my mind at a certain point that one, I was going to introduce the girl I was dating to my parents and see what they thought.
Okay.
Because my dad hated everybody I dated.
Right.
The moment I introduced him to everybody, he liked everybody. All right. He just wanted to be included.
Right.
And the other thing was, I just decided that unless I loved this girl, I was not going to kiss that girl.
Right.
And so I remember I was going out with this girl,
Right.
and she, she's good looking, and we had a good, had fun together. But I wasn't going to kiss her.
Right.
I remember one of the dates that we planned.
Uh-huh.
Well, she started getting pressure from her friends,
Right.
and she was a hairstylist, so all the people at the hairstylist place said, "Are you sure he's not gay?"
It sounds like a great sitcom episode.
I know. So one of the dates she planned was a drive-in in the back of a pickup truck.
Okay.
And I still remained unscathed. I never kissed her because I knew I didn't love her. I mean, she's fun to hang out with.
Right.
And the next person I kissed was my wife, and that's how we ended up together.
Yep. That's a good ending.
Yeah, is that the ending? This is the ending.
I don't know. Do we
this
have
is
anything
how
else?
we're ending. I don't think we have anything.
Dun, dun. You are chosen. Yeah.
All right.
All right. We'll see you next time. Hope that helped you guys. If not, check back. Next week will be better.
All right.
See you.
Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, look us up on Facebook. We've created a Facebook group where you can be part of the conversation. We'll see you next time.